All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Hatz Lab. It's great to see everyone. We got some familiar faces. I know that for sure there's a bunch of new folks joining today for the first time, which is very exciting. We'll give everyone just a few minutes to join in, and then we will cover some quick announcements and then jump into it because there's a lot that we like to do in these labs. Amazing. Okay. All right, it looks like most people have joined in. So let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to the Hatz Lab. The purpose of the lab is in the name. It's to learn and build, learn about the Hatz platform, and build along with us. If you have a Hatz account, go ahead and load that up. Go to the chat. We're going to do some things in the chat and the workshop. If you don't have a Hatz account, if you're just here to check out the platform, see if you might be curious about it, no worries, right? You're still going to learn a lot and you can still take notes, and there's still going to be some things that you can take away from this that hopefully get you interested in getting signed up for Hats. So we're going to cover use case ideation and prompt engineering. We're going to build agents. We're going to build confidence in the platform, and we're going to start building your AI future. That is the purpose of the Hats Lab. A couple housekeeping things as we're getting started. This is recorded. This lab session will be recorded. Not every lab is recorded. The first couple we are recording, but if you have to leave early, or if there's anything you want to revisit, you can go check them out on our YouTube channel after the fact. Another thing is please share your feedback with us after the event. After the lab ends, you'll get an email within 24 hours from Zoom asking for some feedback. We take that feedback very seriously, and if you've come to the first lab, the second lab, and this is our third version, our third iteration, you'll notice that some things have been upgraded based on your feedback. So this is a live event. It might not run as smoothly or as polished as we'd like, and that's the nature of experimentation. It's a lab. Things might not go the way we expect, and that's why we're all here today. You might see me get things wrong. You might see AI get something wrong or throw an error, and that's okay. Part of what we learn in those situations will be how to go back and fix, how to prompt engineer. That's half of the battle here is prompt engineering. And like I said at the beginning, the lab got its name from learn and build. So if you have an account, go ahead and load that up and we'll get started. What are we going to cover today? Well, we're going to look at what is hats, because I know that there are some people here who are new, who are here for the first time, who are maybe just investigating the platform. We're going to look at the anatomy of AI. This is really our use case ideation phase. So what does every successful use case need? And we're going to cover something new today, which is when and why to use the chat versus an agent versus a workflow. So when we make that transition from just the chat into the workshop, why? Right? We haven't spent a lot of time talking about that in previous sessions. And then we're going to move into use case building, which is what I think 90% of you are here for. Use cases selected to demonstrate the best way to just get started. And then we'll cover some resources and next steps. Those are the education and support resources that are at your fingertips, but you might not know about. And then lastly, based on how much time we have left, there will be a Q&A. You can throw questions into the chat. Because I'm sharing my screen, I won't always see every chat that comes through, but we will be taking breaks in between steps and in between sections just to review the chat and see if there's anything that we need to address or answer. Okay, so let's move into what is hats. If you're here for the first time and you're seeing this for the first time, I envy you. You're here at a great time. So hats is the curation of AI in one platform. No code chat, no code workflows, no code agents. There are more than 50 AI models in one place, including OpenAI, Anthropic, Gemini, Meta. You get to use all of these models in one place without having to get subscriptions to all of them individually. And there are also more than 50 ways to connect your data. That number will be different next week, and it'll be different the week after that. We're always adding new integrations and connections and ways to access more data outside of just the AI models. So you can connect hats to things like Microsoft 365, Salesforce, N8N, Zapier, Make.com, those big automation workflow building platforms. You can connect it to Airtable and Hubspot. A lot of cool things that you can do. We might be talking about some of those tools today and in future labs. But the thing that underscores all of this is that it's all done securely. Your data stays your data and it remains private. So you can use this, your whole organization can use Hats without putting any of your data at risk or sharing any of your sensitive or proprietary information with AI's training data. Okay, let me check the chat here. Looks like we're good. The problems that Hat solves for first are security and adoption. We just talked about security, but the big reason for that is that shadow AI is already happening. If you don't know exactly what AI tools or platforms people at your organization are using, then it's shadow AI. If there's not a standard AI tool or AI platform or collection of tools that you're using, then you don't know what people might be experimenting with. And they heard about this cool thing and they're going to go try it. Is it secure? Are you using it securely? And that leads to the next question, which is adoption. Is there a standard? Even if everyone has access to AI or you've given the green light to certain tools, what is the standard and how are you using them and how are you measuring your efficiencies? HATS helps with measuring adoption, measuring usage, and an education pathway to get your whole team up on the same page. Third, we talk about education and use case development, and that's really what the lab is about. Okay, there's a lot more use case development that happens here in the lab than elsewhere, and that's why you're all here. So I'm excited to do that with you. Rachel, if you don't mind, I have a terrific uh, she's off camera right now, but a lab assistant, you're more than that. If you can share the survey, thank you very much. Trying to go on theme here and use lab terminology, but calling you a lab assistant just does not paint the full picture. Rachel is our senior partner marketing associate and put together a lot of the content that you'll have access to and that we're going to talk about at the end. Done a great job. So thanks for taking a second to fill out this survey. We'll leave that up for a few moments so you can get that done. And then we're going to move into the anatomy of AI. Like we said, this is your use case ideation phase. So before you even start prompting, before we look at the platform, we need to talk about what use cases have in common, what every use case needs. Because if you start just writing prompts and going in and trying to build, AI is going to give you some kind of an output, but we want to make sure there are some guardrails, there are some parameters in place to give you better, more optimized outputs. So every AI use case, whether we're in the chat or in the workshop, it needs an input, it needs a role that AI is going to play, and it needs an output. The reason that I have all three of those as crucial must-haves for any use case is because if you remove any of them, you're still going to get something from AI. You're going to give something to AI, you're going to get something out of AI. But having a defined input, you can give AI the context about that input. Having the role that AI needs to play, like an action word, a verb that AI is going to do with that input, and telling it what kind of output you want, that right there, without any other education, is going to give you a much better output than if you had one or two of those. So what do we mean when we say inputs and outputs? Well, there's a question which is what and where. And I want to take a second here to actually draw your attention to something you should have gotten an email about earlier today. But Rachel, if you can drop the lab report in the chat, that would be great. So if anyone hasn't gotten this yet, this is updated from last week. We will not be updating this every single week. We will get to a point where, we have some use cases that we repeat. That's totally fine. But if you go to that link that Rachel just shared in the chat and click on the lab report, it's about an 8 page, 7 or 8 page PDF with some of the things that we're talking about today. And it also has prompts that you can try in Hats. So just download that, have that off to the side somewhere. You won't need to be doing too much with it as we go, but I just want to make sure you know you don't have to write all of this down. This is in that lab report. So when we talk about anatomy of AI, and we're talking about inputs and outputs, at the basic level, that just means what am I giving AI and what is AI giving me back? But it goes deeper than that. Um, we have uh, we have a format and we have a location for inputs and for outputs. So format is, am I just giving AI raw text, like a plain sentence? Am I asking it a question? Or am I giving it access to my CRM? Am I uploading a PDF or a spreadsheet? Am I giving it an image? Am I telling it to look through my emails to find something? What is the format of this data that AI is getting, the information that I'm giving to AI? And at the same time, what is the location, right? Is this just in my brain? I'm gonna go type something in. Is it a file on my computer? Is it something in my CRM? Is it maybe out on the internet? If I don't tell AI what the input is and where it is, it's gonna have to guess, and we don't want it to guess. We want to mitigate. We want to eliminate as much guessing that AI has to do as possible. Same thing goes for outputs. Do I want AI to just give me text? If I'm in the chat, that's probably what I want. If I'm just chatting with AI, I want to ask it a question, it gives me an answer. I give it a command, it goes and does what I want it to do and explains it. Or do I need it to create a file for me? Do I need it to, am I expecting it to create a PDF? Well, if I don't tell it that, it might not do that. It's going to have to guess what I want. Do I need it to go take an action in my CRM? I need to tell it that. So we have the type, we have the input format, and we have the input location. We have the output format and the output location. Do I need it to go take an action in my CRM? Do I need it to write an email? Do I need it to send me a message? These are all things to consider before you start writing any prompts. So once you've identified those, it's basically pick one from each category here, right? You can mix and match, but it needs to suit your use case. So don't even start writing until you've identified input, output, format, location. And this is in your lab report. You can reference this. The other column in your lab report is the role of AI. We have an input, we have an output. That's the bread of our sandwich. But we need to create that middle layer, which is the role of AI. This is almost always going to be a verb. It's going to be an action that the AI has to take. Oftentimes, I will see people giving AI tons of context. Just they'll upload a file and they'll tell it everything about this file, but they never ask it to summarize it or analyze it or edit it, right? Or reference it. They just kind of give it to AI, and AI has to read between the lines, so to speak, and assume or guess what the user wants. So we want to get rid of all of that ambiguity, right? We want it to know exactly what it's supposed to do with that input, exactly where to find that input, exactly what kind of output to create from it. So you're going to use a verb, summarize this PDF, or if you're sending it to the web, right? Scrape these websites and come back with URLs and summaries of what's on those pages. If it's something in your CRM, right? Go update this account in Salesforce or open a file in OneDrive or edit a file in OneDrive. You're going to give it a verb. So going back, whoops. So going back, we have these four options, and then there's a fifth that kind of goes in the middle. And what that looks like is very simply three parts. You have your input, the role of AI, and the output. So these are 5 examples. This is possibly the most important slide in this deck. This is our crawl, walk, run matrix. If you've been around Hatz AI for a while, you know we talk about crawl, walk, run all the time. You can't talk to anyone at Hatz without hearing them say crawl, walk, run at least once in the conversation. And what we mean by that visually is this up and to the right trajectory. I think you're all familiar with up and to the right if you're in businesses, right? This is good. This is a good trajectory that you want your company to be on. Crawl is where everyone's just getting started. They're getting their feet wet with AI. Most people have kind of interacted with AI, but very, very, very few people are what we would consider power users. So it's important to just start here. Low impact, low effort, right? You're not trying to reinvent the wheel or create something that's going to totally disrupt your company or your industry or whatever. You're creating something that can save you 5, 10, 20 minutes on a recurring basis, right? Help me, organize these files or help me, respond to these emails faster or find this information for me online more quickly. Very basic use cases. We're going to look at some of those, but they're low effort. You don't want to spend too much time on them. You're really just here to understand how AI works and build some muscle memory and learn the best practices around prompting so that as you move through this crawl walk run journey, you're going to still not have to spend too much time building things, but they're going to be higher impact. You're going to learn what works and learn how to leverage these AI tools and these connections and different LLMs. You're going to learn a lot. It might seem like there's a lot that you have to learn, but I promise it's going to just come as you use it. Eventually, you're going to end up here, high effort. You're going to spend maybe an hour, 2 hours building a workflow, a more complex thing, but the impact that it's going to have. I built a workflow. I made a YouTube video about it. It's on our YouTube channel, where I spent like an hour, 2 hours building an AI workflow, and it's saving me about 200 hours this year. And those are real numbers. That's a conservative estimate of how much time it's saving me. You can go watch that video. It's a longer one, but I recommend it. That would be a run use case. So we want to move from crawl to walk to run. Okay. So what we're doing today is basic use cases up into this crawl, walk, run, up into the right trajectory. Now, I did tell you, and let me pause here if there's anything in the chat that we need to check out. Any chance you could put the link to the YouTube video in the chat? Yeah, we can definitely, Rachel, if you don't mind grabbing the YouTube link and sharing that. And then there's a video there called AI, I think it's called like Hatz saved me 200 hours or something like that. I'm sure it's not too far down. Thank you. Perfect. So I did say that we were going to talk about this. This was a heavily requested section or a heavily requested topic from the feedback that we got in from the previous labs. When to use what and why. We're going to look at the chat. We're going to look at an agent, and we're going to look at a workflow today. So I'm in the sake of saving time here. I'm not going to read all of this, but you can grab a screenshot if you'd like to, or this will be on YouTube and you can grab you can go back and revisit it there. But chat, basically fast, flexible task, very conversational. Agent is still conversational, as we'll see. And then workflows, not conversational, but very repeatable, consistent, multi-step processes. So those are the big headlines for that. And yeah, just grab a screenshot of this, take a second to read it, and we'll talk about when and why as we go through today. The last thing before we move into the actual live build is always, always, always use AI to use AI. You should be asking yourself, can I AI that? You should be asking yourself, have I asked AI how to do this yet? If you're trying to build something in AI, ask it to help you write the prompts. I have 4 examples of using AI to use AI here. Ask AI to help you write prompts. Ask AI to help you outline a process before building a workflow. Ask AI to help you troubleshoot Hatz, troubleshoot other platforms. I've used it this week for like 3 or 4 of our platforms that we use at Hatz. Ask AI to build the workflow. We have the Hatz Workshop Assistant that can build workflows. You can ask it to explain, hey, I do this thing every day. Here's the process. Can you help me outline this as a workflow? It says, sure. And would you like to build a workflow? Absolutely. It takes like a minute. It'll build this workflow for you. It's great. So use AI to use AI. Great. We'll talk about some of these questions in the when we get to the section that section here. So hold on those questions for a second. Let's move into the live build. And just bear with me while I switch screens. All right. Okay. And this is, if you have a Hats account, this is when you should be moving to the Hats login. And I'm going to share my screen. All right. Everyone should be able to see that. If you can't see it, let me know, but I think you can. Okay, perfect. So let's take a second. I'm going to actually open up that lab report that Rachel dropped in because I'm going to build what we were building. I'm going to build what you're going to be building based on this lab report. So in the chat, if you go to page procedure 5, I believe it's page 3, that's where it talks all about using AI to help you use AI. Now, I'm not going to spend too much time showing you around the chat today because we have tons of videos about that. I think I have like 8 or 9 videos that we put up last week just about how to use the chat. And there's tons of training about this, just lots of information about how to use this. But at a quick, high level tour here, this is where you choose your LLM. I mentioned at the beginning that we have different AI platforms. So if you want to use a Google model or OpenAI or Anthropic or whatever, you can choose all of those here. They have attributes based on their intelligence, their speed, how many credits they consume, vision, tools, image generation, all that good stuff. So you can see which one you're picking and which one you're interacting with. And you can also choose, I mentioned there's more than 50 ways to connect to your data. That's all here. A lot of these are just built-in tools that you don't need any other kind of account to use. Like you don't need a Perplexity account to use Perplexity and Hats. You don't need any special licenses or anything to use these. They're just built into the platform. And then if you've got other things like Microsoft or Fireflies or Calendly, especially things like Zapier, you can connect and authenticate to those and start talking to the data that's in these other platforms here. You can also just turn on Auto Tool and it'll pick the right tools for you. We do have memory, so my memory is default on, but you can also turn memory off for different chats. That's a cool feature. So this is the chat. I'm just gonna say, you know, let's just give it one example of the chat before we move on to building an agent. I'm just going to say from this procedure 1, use AI to use AI. I need help writing a prompt that will get AI to consistently and efficiently help me with this use case. I'm trying to, and we'll say review documents for an RFP that I'm applying to for my construction company. And we're just going to send this off and see what AI comes up with. And there's lots of ways that you can, ask AI the same kind of question. It's not always about getting it right the first time, okay? Because the chat is iterative, right? You can go, oh, that isn't quite what I was looking for. Can you try it differently? And we're going to look at one way to do that, which is called branched chatting. So I did pick a model that reasons. It thinks a lot before it gives an answer. So that's why it takes a couple seconds here, but this is giving me a prompt. So copy and paste the text below into your AI tool when you upload your RFP documents. So it gave this whole prompt in just a few seconds, and I didn't have to write this. Pretty great. So use AI to use AI when you're trying to come up with prompts, when you're trying to think through use cases. Anytime you're trying to do that, just start in the chat, pick your favorite model, and start asking questions. If I wanted to change to a different model, I can click on this little edit button under my initial prompt and change the model, or I can change the prompt. So if I wanted to change it from construction company to my nonprofit or whatever it might be, I can do that, or I can just send it to a different model. and now I've got a branch off of this chat. Um, there was a question that I want to address here about Hatz accessing SharePoint or OneDrive. It is both. If you go into the documentation for for Hatz, it shows all of the tool calls that it can make, and it can call into different aspects of that Microsoft environment. Um, so you can see this is a different kind of answer than Gemini gave me, but it's still pretty cool. All right, we're gonna switch gears and move into creating an agent. Now, if you were here last week, you know that we created an agent for our company policies. This one's going to be a little bit different. It's going to be the little blurb I have on that lab report is we're going to create an agent that can help me come up with helpful AI use cases for my department and my role. And its purpose is going to be an agent that knows the crawl, walk, run approach and can help ideate use cases. So if you're in Hats, we're going to click on Workshop up here on the top navigation bar. And then we are going to click on New Agent. Give everyone a second to get here. So when we click on New Agent, that takes us to the Build Assistant. If you've been around Hats for a while, you know that this is a relatively new feature, and it's probably one of my favorite new features of the last month. It makes building agents an order of magnitude easier and quicker. So there's a few things we have to do before we start getting it to help us write instructions or suggest improvements. We're going to give it a name, okay? So if we see on procedure 2, create an agent, we have our purpose, we have our input, our role of AI, and our output. And because this is a use case agent, it's an agent that's going to help with use case, we're going to call this use case helper agent. And that's just going to be helpful for me to know, when I'm looking for it, what it's called. If I search for something, it's, oh, use case, right? So like, here's my use case agent. It's also going to give the AI a little bit of a nod to when we start doing this build assistant, it's going to look at the name and the description and say, here's what I think this agent is supposed to do. So we're giving it a name that defines sort of what its role is. And then we're going to go to the description and we're going to say, we're just going to take that description from procedure 2 and drop it in here. So it's an agent that knows the crawl, walk, run approach and can help ideate use cases. And we're also going to say, we're going to say um, it guides the user to easy to start with, ask clarifying questions, and even suggests prompts to help them get started. So I'll give you a second to take a look at that. You don't have to write exactly this if you're building along with us. You can write something similar to this. But the core principle here, what we're trying to get it to do is help us think through use cases. It's a use case ideation agent. We're going to have a conversation with it. So I want it to be able to ask us follow-up questions and clarifying questions. And I want it to suggest new prompts to try. The other thing that we've got here in procedure 2, create an agent, is the LLM choice and the tools that we're giving it. So I'm going to scroll down a little bit and choose an AI model. You'll notice that you won't be able to actually select any tools if you don't have an AI model selected. And that's just because not every AI model has the ability to call tools. So we want to pick a model that does. The one that I'm going to use for this is Gemini. Let's see. I think I said Gemini 3.1 Pro preview. So let's go with that one. And now I can either turn on auto tool or for this one, I just said Firecrawl in the lab report. So we're going to choose Firecrawl. All right, so I have Firecrawl here. Give everyone a second to catch up. What Firecrawl does is if you give it a URL, it can go and scrape through that URL, extract the information from that page or those pages at that website, and It's different from Perplexity, where Perplexity will go and research something for you. Um, Tvili and Exa and Google search are going to go and find websites for you. But if you already have that URL, like your company website, like it says in the lab report, you don't need you don't need to use those other kinds of tools. Firecrawl will do just fine. So we've got all of that information in here, and I'm going to now go over to the build assistant, and I'm going to say help me write instructions. When I click on help me write instructions, you can see the wand and the sparkles here. Basically, what that means is it's going to use AI um, to look at the agent name and the description and come up with a prompt or instructions, the system prompt, this whole piece that's going to go in here that defines the agent's behavior and personality. So let's click on help me write instructions. So it's thinking for a bit, and then it will create a prompt that we'll be able to just add in to this instructions box. There we go. Very cool. And we're going to click on apply to instructions. Okay. So very easy. Okay. Didn't didn't have to do too much. It put this whole prompt in here, and all I did was give it a description and a name. And just reading over this really quickly, it's always fun to see. I've run this use case probably 5 times in preparation for this. It's always interesting to see it's never exactly the same exact prompt, right? And that's because AI is non-deterministic. It's never going to give you, when you give a use case like this, it's never going to come up with the exact same combination of words in the exact same order. The spirit of it, the essence of it is always going to be the same, but it's interesting to see how how it interprets these descriptions each time. I love that. So assess and clarify, ideate use cases, provide starter prompts. Perfect. So we've got that done. The last thing we're going to do before we actually go and create the agent is give it a greeting message. This is important because when you create the greeting message, this is what's going to display when you go and interact with this agent in the chat. So I'm going to say something like, tell me about your role or provide your company URL, and I'll help you come up with use cases and prompts. The reason that we have this greeting message is because if you were not the person who created this agent, how would you know how to interact with it unless you open it up, read through the system prompt? You wouldn't. So the greeting gives you a way to see how this agent was meant to be interacted with. And it's often like, I think of this greeting message as AI prompting you, like prompting the human. How does this AI agent want to be interacted with? So let's go ahead and create our agent. Up on the top right, we're going to click on Create Agent, and then we're going to click on Share Settings. We're not actually going to share this one out anywhere. I just want to show you that when you create a new agent or any kind of a workshop item in Hats, the default is private, which means you're the only person who can see it. No one else at your company can see it. No one else who has a Hats account can see it. You do have the option to then share with your organization. You can click on My Organization, which will share to everyone, or you can share to specific groups if you or your MSP have set those up. So we're going to leave this at just My Organization. Once you've selected one of these, you also then have the option to share it with the community, which means anyone who has a Hats account will be able to see it in the workshop Discover page. So I just want to call that out. I'm going to leave mine as private, so I'm not going to save those settings. But we're going to go test this agent out once and then move on to a workflow. But I did say that as we were building this, I would explain why I would use an agent versus the chat. Okay. So let's go to test agent. And you can see here's my greeting. Tell me about your role, provide your company URL. This you interact with this agent. You interact with any agent in Hats just like you would interact with the chat. You can see what tools are selected. It's in this dropdown. It's in the same dropdown as the LLM dropdown. Okay, so we've got this use case helper agent. It tells me what model it's running on. It tells me about all of these attributes, etc. But why would I choose this versus just the chat? Well, the reason is if I start interacting just with GPT 5.4, it doesn't know, it doesn't have the context that it's supposed to be a use case helper. I have to explain to it, hey, here's what I want you to do. I want you to help me come up with use cases. I want you to follow this crawl, walk, run framework. I want you to ask me clarifying questions. You have to give it all of that context. Whereas if you select the agent, if you go back over here, the agent has all of this running in the background. This is kind of like the prompt behind the prompt. All right, so all of this happens when you send that first message to the agent. The agent goes and reads this whole thing and goes, oh, right, I'm supposed to do this. I'm supposed to follow these instructions. Here's how I'm supposed to behave. Here's how the user wants me to interact and is expecting me to interact with it. So an agent, there's a question here. An agent is a specific chat. In a way, yeah, an agent is a very specific way of interacting with AI. You can give it preset tools, you can give it preset information, you can give it files, you can give it access to things in OneDrive. Um, and I do see another question here about throwing an error. How do I get it to show up again? Error processing response. That happens sometimes. Just try refreshing the page and try again. If it's still causing any issues, we'll help you out with that one. But so let's just try this once before we move on to creating a workflow. I'm going to say I am a let's say supervisor at a uh, food manufacturing factory. What can AI do for me? Just something like that. If you've got this, if you've built this to this point, there you go. While this is generating a response, we've got another question. If we're working on a use case and referencing certain documents, should we build the agent and give it facts and upload the files? And any questions? Or regarding the case and use the agent, or would it be more efficient for our users? Yeah, it's gonna depend. You're gonna be building some agents that are just for you, and some agents that you're gonna share out with other people that have like set instructions and set files. You can also give files like templates and files and source documents to an agent, um, but then you can you can also upload, right? So I can click on this and upload new files to the agent. The best way is just to build one and try it and see how it's going to work in your own environment. Um, okay, so here's use case one, streamlining handovers and reporting. Use case two, SOP management. Use case three, it gives the crawl, walk, run version of each one of these, and it even creates these prompts for me. So if I just wanted to have a chat, I wanted AI to help me brainstorm something, doesn't matter about the context, I'm going to go to the chat. If I want AI to have very important, crucial context about this, about my background, about what it's supposed to do and how it's supposed to behave, that's where I'm going to build an agent. But then that brings us to workflows. So if you go to procedure three, and I do know there's some more questions that have come in. If we don't answer them on the call, we will follow up via email to make sure you get your answers. But just in the sake of time here, we're going to move on to procedure three, which is creating a workflow. And you can see that it says we're going to use AI to create an industry trend report that searches specific sites for news and thought leadership, and then creates a downloadable report. So the purpose is it's a curation workflow that finds the most relevant industry news for me. The input is going to be the industry and or a topic. The role of AI will be to identify sources, compile the info, create a report, and output a file link. The output then is a Word doc of research with an executive summary. And you can see this is going to be a four-part kind of 5 step but 4 part um, workflow. So how do we begin creating that? Well, we're going to go back to the workshop. You could use the Hatz Workshop Assistant to do this, but where's the fun in that? You're here to learn how to build workflows, and I want to show you how to do that from scratch. Um, so we're going to click on New Workflow. That's going to bring us right here. And if we look at the lab report again, what we're basically going to do here is just copy and paste these prompts into this workflow. But there's more than one step. So let's build the scaffolding for this workflow before we start writing any prompts, before we choose any models or give any tool access. Okay? How do we do that? Well, we've got this first prompt. Think of this as like step one. This is one step in a workflow where there's going to be an input, role of AI, and an output. Every step has those things. So we're going to click on Add New Step, and we're going to click on Prompt Step. There are other kinds of steps in these workflows. There's documentation, there's videos about these. We're going to just focus on prompt steps for today's lab. So we're going to add a prompt step. And if we look at the lab report again, you can see that there's a step 1, and then there's step 2A and 2B that I want to run concurrently, and then a step 3 and a step 4. So because I want 2A and 2B, we're going to click over here back into prompt 1. If you just click on this like white section up here or click over here somewhere, you'll get this Add New Step option again. So click on Prompt Step again, and now we have step 1 that splits into 2 steps. We can just rename these so it's easier to see. We're going to call this step 2B, and we're going to call this step 2A. Whoops. And you can rename them just by clicking that little pencil icon. Now we're going to add another step off of these. Again, we're just building the scaffolding here because we need to understand where we're starting and where we're ending. So we can see that because I created a new step, it has this connector line, but I can grab this node and click and drag down to connect it to step 4, right? So we've got step 1 splits into 2A and 2B, they recombine into 4, and now we're going to add another prompt step, which is step 5. All right. This is our scaffolding. So if you've got this lab report open, you can see that we have the LLMs that I want for each one, and we have the tools that I want for each one. So for step 1, I want it to run on GPT 5.4. So let's click on this LLM dropdown, GPT 5.4. These are going to run on Gemini 3 Pro Preview. And the reason I'm choosing these models is mostly just because I want you to see the outputs, how they all work. They're all good at each one of these steps. I could have basically used any of these models for any of these steps. I want this one on Claude Sonnet 4.6, and then my final step is also going to be Claude Sonnet 4.6. Going back up through tools, I have the first one is going to need to use Perplexity and Exa. Perplexity is great for research, finding all kinds of web sources and kind of analyzing as it goes and bringing them all together. And then Exa is web intelligence, so it's gonna grab the citations, it's gonna search. It's kind of like a AI-powered Google search, if you want to think of it like that. Tvili is very similar, but we used Tvili last week, so we're gonna use Exa today. So that now has 2 tools. Step 2, these both just need Firecrawl, because what's going to happen here is this step is going to go and find the information, find those websites, and hand off those URLs to step 2A and 2B. So if you recall from before when I was talking about Firecrawl, because we already have those URLs, we can just hand off those URLs to Firecrawl and it'll take it from there. So these 2 steps both have Firecrawl, and we don't need a tool for step 4. And step 5, we're going to turn on code execution because we want it to create, it says file creation, right? We want it to create a Word document for us. So believe it or not, that's the hard part, right? Just getting the scaffolding built, understanding we're starting up here with an input, and there's nothing in here yet, but we're starting up here. What do these steps need to do and what's my final output going to be? That's the hardest part. So I'm just going to grab the prompts from that lab report and paste them right in here. And this is where it gets fun, okay? Because I'm telling it to find the best websites for news and thought leadership about, and I have these brackets in here for topic. So we're going to get rid of topic and we're going to leave the cursor blinking right there, but we're going to click on create new input down here on the bottom left. All right, so create new input, and we're going to choose short answer, and we're going to call this topic. And in the description, we're going to say, what topic should the AI research? We'll make that required. So this is telling the user what to put in this little field. Okay? And then industry, we're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to get rid of industry. We're going to add a create new input. We're going to add a new user input, and it's going to be industry and in which industry. And we'll make that required as well. So if we go to preview, click up here on the top nav bar, that little eye icon, you can see that we have two user inputs. So when the user interacts with this workflow, they're just going to have to enter two little words, and AI will take the rest. So that's prompt one. Step 2A and 2B will each have the same. They're going to run concurrently. So we're going to drop this in. And in 2A, I'm saying search the URLs from, we're going to highlight output. This is very important, okay? We've created these red user inputs, which give us those form fields that the user is going to fill out. But if I want step 2 to reference the output, which is going to be 10 URLs numbered 1 through 10, that's all I want this to do. Return 10 URLs numbered 1 through 10. If I want this step or this step to be able to reference those URLs, I need to click right here in search the URLs from prompt 1. So I need to, down here under outputs, I need to click prompt 1. And that's going to basically give the whole output from this step as a kind of input down here for a later step. So we're going to say, uh, you know, actually that should say input, but search the URLs, and we're going to split this. I only want this to handle 5 of those. So because this is creating a numbered list, it's going to have number 1 URL, number 2 URL, number 3 URL, etc. I want this to take numbers 1 through 5. So URLs numbered 1 through 5. And we're just going to give this here about this topic. And we're going to say format your findings like this. Okay? Source name, URL, findings with an executive summary, and more in-depth findings, for each one. So we'll do that over here as well. As I'm doing this, you can go ahead and follow along, but I just want to make sure this is numbers 1 through 5 and this is numbers 6 through 10. Great question about splitting this. I split this process for 2 reasons. The first is that I want you to see that you can split a prompt. You can split a step in a workflow so that there are 2 concurrent steps. These will run at the same time. You can even have 2 starting points that converge. So like we could have gotten rid of this thing and it just kind of looks like this, where there's 2 steps that converge into one. I just want you to see the flexibility that the workflows have. And the second reason is because if you ask AI to do too much, especially with tools, you want it to use these tools. If you ask it to do too much, you might not get the exact kind of quality output that you want. So I try to lighten the load, right? Lessen the burden um, of each step, right? Think of it like a pie where I want the AI 100% focused on this, and the more I'm giving it, like that power gets split a little bit. So split it into 2 steps for that reason. So Another question that I had was about how I got this topic to show up here. The exact same way that I got it for step one, I'm just clicking on user input. You just click it right there and it'll show up. And we're going to make this look exactly the same. And then we're going to move down to step four or step three, basically, because it's 2A and 2B. So we're going to do this from the lab report. I'm just copying this in and I'm telling it to compile all of its findings from output 2A. So that's going to be here and 2B. So we're going to get rid of this and 2B. So it's going to take the information that is generated here and the information that's generated here and create a new report, like a consolidated report from URLs 1 through 5 and URLs 6 through 10. The executive summary at the top, source name, URL, findings, and more in-depth findings. It's very similar, all right? And did I spell summary wrong? Oh well. So it's taking, you're going to have a report here, and it's combining them in this step. Okay, we'll rename this step three because it actually is step three. And then lastly, the very final step here is what I want, right? This is going to be my final report. So I'm going to say, I need this in a Word doc. Okay, so I'm going to say turn the output from step three, and you might have to scroll on this bar a little bit. But I'm saying turn it into a downloadable Word doc and only output the file link. It will output the file the link to download, but sometimes it'll give you like a whole preamble of, I created this and here's how I did it and here's what it contains. I really just want the link, right? I don't really care about all of the stuff that it created. I just want what it created. And that's why I have code execution turned on. This code execution tool is there so that you can have file creation in these workflow steps and in the chat and with your agents. Code execution is great because it'll let you actually create new files. So that's where we've got these 5 steps, and I'm going to zoom out a little bit. Let me, sorry, I zoomed out and zoomed in, and I'm sharing my screen and I lost. There we go. So let's go to preview. We'll do topic. Um, so let's do topic. We'll just do AI, right? AI news, and I want it to be what industry do I want? Uh, Anyone want to throw an industry into the comments? If not, I can CPA. There we go. Thank you. CPA. Someone beat you to it. Okay. We'll click generate. So it's going to look for AI news. It could have been anything, right? It could have been uh, like literally anything. That's the whole point of this. It'll search for whatever you tell it to search for. So it's going to run. It might take a minute or two here to run, but it's still going to be faster than anything that any Google searches that I would have done, copying and pasting links, reading things. So there you go, 10 strong websites. Very cool. Um, and I did see a question about credit summaries here. I believe those are now in the workflow run history, so I'll take a look at that for whoever asked the question there. Um, I know we changed a little bit of the UI here last week. So this output gave me 10 websites. And in step 2A, I asked it to look at numbers 1 through 5 more closely because this step didn't actually uh, read anything on these websites. It just looked for websites that fit the criteria. So step 2A is doing this, and step 2B is doing 6 through 10, where it's actually the AI is clicking on this link, reading what's on reading the content that's on these pages, compiling it, and sending it to the next step. So here we go. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There we go. And I told you at the beginning, as a disclaimer, that it might not work exactly the way we want it to work. So in this case, it didn't actually give me the URLs. It told me like a summary of the URLs that it used up here. But I really was envisioning, it would be like this, and I found this on this page, and et cetera, et cetera. So we'll see if step 2B did it. Same thing. It was the same model. So it kind of it I wasn't specific enough. It told me the websites that it searched, but it did more summarizing than uh, giving me, specific quotes, which is fine. We can go back. That's prompt engineering. So we'll go back and make some edits. Okay, and I do see some questions that we will respond to in email follow-up. Don't worry. Okay, so if you recall, if you still have your lab report open for create a workflow, step 3 is compiling all of those findings to create a report. So here's our report. And this actually did what I want it to do. Okay. Where it's actually taking all of that information and creating this in-depth report, which I love. Amazing. So here's my report. And then step 4, like I can download this. Okay. I can click on export to PDF and I can export to a Word doc that's built right into your workflow. So I can do that. But I also want to see this code execution step create a document from scratch, which is a very cool thing that Hatz can do. You can also tell it all kinds of, colors to include and how you want it formatted and what things you want to be bold and headings. And you can be very specific with that. Get AI to help you write those prompts, but it can create documents from scratch. It might take a moment or two to do this. So while we're waiting for this step to run, the last thing that I wanted to cover was just some of the resources that you have available to you. Rachel, if you can just reshare that YouTube link just to the homepage. We put new content up on YouTube pretty much every week, and if we don't, there's a lot that's coming out the next week. So lots of good content about new features, demos, use case videos. We even put our Feature Friday events there, where we meet with our MSP partners to talk about what's new each week. You can follow. You can subscribe to our new feature alerts. Rachel, if you don't mind dropping the new feature alert link, if you have that handy. If not, I can grab it too. But we have new feature alerts. Those go out almost every Wednesday. There's one coming out a little bit later today about some of the things we released last week. So you can sign up for those. And if you haven't completed our onboarding, the education pathway of the AI Champion and AI Navigator courses, I highly recommend doing that because it covers a lot of the things that we talked about, but in more depth. It goes more in depth about the chat, more in depth about workflow inputs and outputs and how to build things. These are great lab sessions with, a live audience and people who can ask questions. But if you want videos that you can go back and revisit, I recommend checking out those courses, and you get a certification at the end. I'm hoping that this step finishes. It is working, right? I'm asking it to create a whole new doc from scratch. I'm hoping it finishes before the top of the hour. But if it doesn't, I'll figure out a way to show it on YouTube somehow. So any last minute questions before we call it a day? I see some people saying that they were building along and theirs just finished and it looks great, which is there's another one that just said that. That's awesome. So if you were building along, amazing. Feel free to uh, you know, email us, show us what it looks like. You can always follow us on LinkedIn, and I'd love to see what you're using AI to create. Last minute plug for a project that we or just something that we do. If you have any use cases that you think are really, really cool and you want the Hats team to see them, if you want to do a kind of a case study, not even a case study, just a story. If you want us to talk to you about the story, why did you decide to build this use case? What went into it? How is it helping you? How can this help other people? Send us a message. We'd love to follow up and see how you're using the Hats platform. And look at that, just in time. AI in accounting, AI in CPA accounting. Let's see what it looks like. There we go. So I didn't give it any explanation for what it should look like, really. I just said create a document, and this is what it created. I know we're 1 minute over, and so I want to take the last, one more minute just to show you if I wanted this to run at a certain cadence, I can click on triggers down here and zoom out a little bit. I can click on add trigger. I can make this run every day, and I can say run every 1 day. I can set the time. Okay. So this is going to run every day at midnight. I can change the timing here. So every day at 9 a.m. And if I create that trigger, oh, sorry. I'm only sharing one screen, so you guys can't see it. I apologize. Here, let me stop sharing and I'll share. There we go. That's what it looks like. Perfect. So you can create these triggers, and that means that every day at 9 a.m. this is going to run without me having to do anything. Now, because I don't have any uh, inputs in here, it's dependent on a user input. If I know that I want this to run for AI in CPA, I can do AI news in the CPA industry. These don't have to be user inputs, right? I can just completely get rid of uh, about the topic. I can get rid of this stuff. And now this all of a sudden becomes, I can delete these out. This all of a sudden becomes a workflow without any user inputs, and it's just going to rely on the prompts. So every day at 9 a.m., it's going to run this report. It's going to find websites. It's going to scrape them. It's going to create its findings and then create a document. And I can then go into my workflow run history and grab the document. So lots of things you can do here. We are going to end because we're a minute over, a couple minutes over. But thank you so much for everyone who came out to the lab. Really appreciate it. Appreciate those of you who stuck with it 3 minutes over. Hope to see you all next week. And until then, happy prompting. Take care.